Side Part. It's like a book club with your best friend, but make it a podcast. Welcome back to another episode of Side Part. I'm Nikki, your bookish bestie, and today we are going to finish up The Road of Bones by Demi Winters. We're covering chapters 46 through the end. Keep in mind, you are reading along with me, so I have not read ahead. So my thoughts, theories, reactions are just based solely on this book. Before we dive into this episode, I have to know, if you have not read ahead, are we Team Ray? Am I completely off base here? I mean, I have been before, but let me know in the comments. What are we thinking? How are we feeling? I want each episode of Side Part to truly feel like you're just hanging out with your best friend, me, at a book club. And I've talked about this before, but my favorite part about book club are those rich, like deep, meaningful side conversations that we have before we actually dive into the book. So each episode, I'm going to start with a side chat segment before we actually dive into our book chat. A side chat can be something that's bookish adjacent, mom related, any random thought, musing I have just rolling around my brain. This week, though, there's something I really want to talk about. It's kind of, I don't know, been percolating around my brain for the last few days, and it's just the mental load that we have as moms. And Wednesday night, I was adding things to my Walmart app, and they were so random. It was like syrup, color-changing toothpaste, and I realized, oh no, my daughter, her dance studio opened up registration for summer dance classes, and they opened at midnight. I should really, go on there and make sure she gets a spot because I know that's so important to her. And as I was registering for dance classes at midnight, it hit me. Wow, I do a lot. And I want to clarify, this isn't like me complaining like it's a burden. I don't want to like wish it away or displace the responsibility of being a mom. It's just, I want to just take the time and space to say, as moms, we do a lot. And that's not taking away from dads or anyone that helps take care of your kids or that are in their lives. It's just saying, as moms, let's honor the fact that we do a lot because we care about our family. And sometimes I just take a step back and I'm like, wow, just kind of in awe, And I just like was sitting there and I feel like all of these things feel so small that we do day to day. Like they don't seem like anything I feel like day to day, we think everything we do is just so small or trivial, but making sure that the fridge is just stacked with everyone's favorite foods or healthy foods, right? Or to remember to buy the color changing toothpaste to add a little bit of like whimsy to the night routine, or setting a reminder in your phone to remember that your daughter's dance registration opened up and making sure she gets into those summer classes. None of these things are small when they add up to be something that's actually much, much larger. And I just want to hold space for the fact that sometimes it feels a little heavy, right? We feel like everyone's happiness, everyone's just overall day, the tone of their day kind of relies on us. So how we're feeling, if we've done enough. And yeah, sometimes it can feel like a lot to feel like the foundation that this house of cards is like built upon. And my husband and I were talking the other night and we were like, man, did life feel like this heavy before we had kids? Like, did it feel like this big? And no, it really didn't. And I think if you would have asked pre-kid me, did life feel harder? I don't know. In some ways, I feel like I almost felt like life was harder before kids because I would make things that really weren't important very important. But after I had kids, I don't know, I kind of zoomed out a little bit and, a lot of things fell away. They didn't feel as important. But I will say, kids are at the center of your world and you're at the center of theirs. And being the center of somebody's universe, especially when they're so little, can feel like a really, really big responsibility. And I don't think it's supposed to feel small. I think we're supposed to feel that weight, acknowledge that it exists, and be proud of yourself. Be proud of the fact that, wow, like an entire household runs because you're doing the thing. You're getting the things done. Nothing is small. They might seem like small things. It might feel endless because it is. Like laundry will never be done. Dishes will never be done. It's ongoing. But this week I felt that weight, but it didn't feel crushing. It just felt important. Like I don't know if I feel like I'm rambling at this point, but all of these small things add up and they end up being really important. They end up being really important. And I guess it wasn't that I so much felt the weight of it all. I just felt my importance as a mom. Sometimes I think sometimes I think being a mom, there's a lot of invisible work, but I saw the work. I saw how much I was doing and I saw how much it mattered, not just to me, but to them as well. And I should also qualify, this is important. My husband does do a lot. He's a very present parent. I know I'm a stay-at-home mom, but he literally can jump in at any point and take over. I don't have to give him instructions. Like he's an active parent in every sense. But even with that, I still feel like there's a unique pressure on me as a mom to just remember all of these things. And it might be internal, right? I'm not saying that anyone is making me do these things, but there's always things buzzing around my brain. I don't feel like I'm ever fully, I don't know how to say this, off the hook, so to say. Even right now, as I'm doing this podcast, I'm thinking of what we need to do for dinner, and I have to switch the laundry over the minute I get off of here, and I have to fold what's in the dryer, and it's just ongoing. And you know what? I wouldn't trade it for anything. I'm not entirely sure where I'm even going with all of this. I just think there's points in our life where we need to witness and say, like, yeah, this is kind of hard. It kind of feels like a lot, but it's really worth it. And I don't know if everything in life is supposed to feel easy, and sometimes this does feel really hard. But also, just because it's hard doesn't make it not worthwhile. Anyway, these are the thoughts I have on a Wednesday night while I am just doing all the things because my brain apparently likes to function really well between the hours of 12 a.m. and 3 a.m. with everything I need to do. And suddenly it all becomes clear and laid out, and I have to do it right then and there, or I'll never remember it again. Just because there's something hard in your life or something feels challenging, I don't always think it needs like a fix or a solution. And of course, there's times where there most certainly can be um, more help in various areas. I will not negate that. But sometimes we really just need to be seen and we need to feel validated. And even more important, we need someone to see us and say, yeah, I'm going through that too. And I see you. And I want you to know if you are also in this heavy lifting phase of life as a parent, I just want you to know that there's another mom up at midnight thinking of everything that she needs to do, nursing a baby, placing a Walmart pickup order. And I just want you to know, at least for me, knowing that someone else out there is going through it too, just makes it all feel a little bit less lonely. And I think that sometimes where we get it wrong as a society is that we don't need a million life hacks, right? Sometimes I'm scrolling through Instagram and I feel like everybody's telling me what I'm doing wrong as a mom or in my life and why it's so hard. And sometimes it's just hard because it's hard. It's not always a problem that needs a solution. Sometimes it's just the reality of the stage of life that we're in. And rather than just validating that it's hard, there's always someone telling you how you could do it better. I mean, outside of being a mom, one thing that's brought me immense joy and has really just helped me find a community is just connecting with all of you, connecting about books. Like, if I did not create a bookstagram in the first place and start connecting with other people who are reading, I think motherhood would feel a little bit more lonely for sure. This will also be a shameless plug for my Discord, which has turned into this wonderful community of primarily women that also love reading the same books that I do and that you do. And if you're interested, in my link tree, there's a link to my Discord. Also comment on here and I'll reach out to you with the link to our Discord. But we coincidentally also read a lot of the same books that I'm covering for my podcast. So if that's of any interest to you and you're interested in joining a community outside of just watching this podcast, please come join us. We love having new members. And I think this is a perfect time to transition into our book chat for the day. Today we are talking about, again, The Road of Bones by Demi Winters, chapters 46 through the end of the book. And I have not read ahead, as I said in the beginning, so you are reading this along with me. Any thoughts, theories I have are really just based upon The Road of Bones. Where we left off when we last chatted, Scylla was struggling to detox from the skull leaves with the help of Ray, and Skreda is on the hunt for Scylla. And really at the start of chapter 46, we can already see the threads of Jonas's jealousy kind of coming out. And we really just see Jonas just so stuck in this vision of his future. And his entire reason for existing is just to restore honor to his family name. And then we have his brother, Elias, who is honestly just like really not that into it. And that doesn't seem to matter to Jonas all that much because he's like, yeah, you know what? You actually don't know what's best for you. This is what's important in our family's future. And I guess my question with that is like, why is Jonas so just bent on just having this honor restored to a bloodline that really didn't have a ton of honor to begin with? Is that his way of kind of erasing his father's mark by restoring honor? Like, why not just stay with the Blood Axe crew and kind of create a new life and move on? I'm just wondering, like, what motivates his character to so intensely focus on just getting these lands back? Like, what is that actually going to change? Because I kind of operate like no matter where you go, here you are. I don't think changing like your location or finally arriving to this homestead and securing it for your lands back is going to change anything. It's not going to change the rage you feel. It's not going to erase the pain that has been caused, especially when you return back to the place that a lot of that pain has occurred. So I'm just wondering if there's something a little bit more there that we haven't quite unpacked in this story. So let's pivot a little bit and let's talk about Ray, because really early on, Jonas is quite rightfully so is like, what's wrong with Scylla? Like, she's in the back of the wagon, she's not doing so well, and he doesn't say anything other than trying to protect her confidence. Like, is there another motivation to that? Like, does he like that there's something between them and Jonas is kind of like not in the know, perhaps? I do love that there's a shared secret, but we already know that this is just adding fuel to the fire between Ray and Jonas. Like, there's already contention there, jealousy there, because Jonas just by definition is a very jealous person. But we already can kind of see that this is going to cause an issue later on, and we know it does. Pivoting a little bit, the Slatari gets brought up early on in these chapters, and I mentioned in the end of last episode, I was like, I know this is important, but why? And then when the deaths occurred so close to where they were traveling, I was like, okay, well, it's obviously one of the Blood Axe crew members. My money was on Ray, but it really wasn't like 100% obvious to me yet. I wasn't sure. It just kind of seemed like a plot point that was important. I made note of it, but I was like, but who is it? Literally in my notes, I was like, okay, but like who? So moving forward in the story a little bit, Scylla says another line that makes Ray think that their fathers possibly knew each other. She says, for your safety, of course, it is said with a man with excess pride grows blind to death at his door. And Ray's like, I think our fathers were mutual acquaintances. And I know I said I think their dad is maybe the same guy. I reject that. First of all, it would make things very weird for the romance I've been shipping now for an entire episode and now this episode. But I'm starting to think he's just right that they are mutual acquaintances because yeah, it would make things really weird. Even if it's their adopted dad, it would just still make things very weird. Also, let's add to the list of reasons why I do not really like Jonas. He doesn't listen when she says no. Like, she'll be like, no, and he'll just do what he wants anyway, which is gives me the ick so bad. And their connection is really, for a majority of these chapters, built on just lies. I think one of the most difficult things for me through these chapters was just how naive Scylla felt. She felt so naive. Like, I think since the vampire deer were all like, she's very obviously Galdra, right? Right? But it was so obvious also that Jonas was malevolent and so angry after her brother's death, and she was just so painfully loyal to him and kind to him. And you're just like, it's like watching this car accident and you can do nothing to stop it. And you're like, this guy is scary. And obviously it's because we got Jonas's POV and like we saw his rage and his anger. But it's just like, I'm like, don't go with him. It's like one of those like, okay, this is definitely an Akhtar reference, but when they go stay with the High Lord and later you realize they're talking about the wrong High Lord and you know, she's just so loyal to Jonas in these chapters and you're like, get away from him. This is is not the right guy for you. And Jonas even tells her plainly, he says, I am not a good man, but you might make me one. And he reminds her of this when he, like, I think she's in the jail cell as well. And he's like, I told you I wasn't a good person. And it's like, and she's just like, well, I didn't know he meant it, right? But my heart just like continually would crack open. And I think Ray was the shining light through most of these chapters for me. One of my favorite scenes in this entire book, it actually wasn't the end. It wasn't the end with Ray and Scylla. It was, and I knew this was coming. Like, there's no way this is not going to come. One of my favorite moments was when Ray said, why were you sleeping in Jonas's tent? And I was just, in my notes, I was like, let's go. I have been waiting for this moment. I will say, it was a little bit underwhelming. I wanted him to rage a little more, but instead, like, it was like this quiet calm that kind of like really won me over when he decided to just really get mad at Jonas for taking advantage of Scylla when she was in a really vulnerable time, when she was struggling in the wake of her death with her father and just kind of experienced like the lowest of lows. That's when he chose to like kind of like latch on to her. And she was grieving her father. She was alone. They agreed to protect her. And Ray took issue with that they didn't uphold their oath to protect her. Instead, he chose to take advantage of like a really vulnerable moment. And then also, I feel like I say this every episode, but poor Hecla, freaking Scylla lied to her again. She lied to her again about Jonas. And instead of just telling her the truth about what happened with Jonas, she claimed her night was with Asker. And this woman is just so forgiving. And I adore her. I think she's my favorite character in this entire series. This woman is just too forgiving. And also, I love Gunnar. I know we don't get to see too much of him, but just his humor just really shines through, especially in these chapters. I think my favorite line was he said something about, so Jonas has been nailing our hammer. And I never physically like laugh out loud at books, and I actually laughed out loud. It was so funny to me. And of course, like, so there's all this drama that occurs, but eventually they get to, I'm gonna butcher this name, Skutur, Skutur. They arrive to this town, and Skreda chases Scylla down, and eventually Jonas rescues her. But while she's running away from Skreda, she finds brief refuge and ultimately escapes from Skreda because of Sunvald's temple. And this made me think, like, obviously, I think she has a light on her arms, and I'm thinking her power is possibly just derived from this god in particular. So when she does catch her in this temple, obviously Skreda knows everything, just doesn't tell us. And she tells her about the cohesion rite and her Galder. And so now it's confirmed. Obviously she's Galdra. We kind of already knew that, but it's confirmed. And then she, is just kind of vomiting all this information, and we're like, finally, thank you, please share with the class. And Skreda gives us something important about her sister. She forces a vision where now we know her name's Saga, but we see she's being taken away. Saga is being taken away, and Scylla witnesses it. And then she figures out eventually, after all this, that she's Isa Volsic, and she's a princess, so she's royalty. And yes, is this like, I mean, I feel like every, fantasy book kind of has these a little bit predictable tropes that, like, the simple young woman is actually hidden royalty. And I feel like, though, it really fits in this book. It makes sense. All the pieces are falling into place. I think there's a lot we still don't know, but I was like, I like it. I like where this is heading. Eventually she crawls out of Sunvald's temple, and Jonas whisks her away. But gosh, the way he just talks to her just makes me ill. I have had a few people message me saying, like, give him time. I think he'll grow on you. I don't see that happening right now, but I've been convinced before, and I've been wrong before. So maybe his character arc is going to trend in a different direction. As of right now, not a fan. He couldn't believe that his Scylla had lied to him and that she was really Galdra. Um, he gets a couple points for saving her. I can admit when he does do something nice, but he gets jealous, as predicted, that she gave her a file of leaves to Ray. And at this moment, I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, this is the horse. Wait, no, not horse. This is the hill he's gonna die on. I'm like, wait, whatever. But we learn a few really important things from Skreda. And one, Skreda is obviously very, very powerful. But two, she's fallen out of favor with the queen. That's important to note. It's going to make her very rash and a little bit unpredictable. But also, she tells us that a twin can grant you additional powers. And again, I don't think the sister we keep seeing in the vision is a twin. So, I don't know. That's interesting. Because she calls Scylla a blade breaker. I think, was it at the end? Possibly it was at the end. She says, I didn't know you were a blade breaker. So we learned that Scylla doesn't just have one power, she has additional powers. So I don't know. I think there's more to this story. Obviously, it's an entire series, but there's a lot that we don't know. I think one of my favorite things about these chapters were Ray's POVs. I love how much Jonas just irritated him. I also hate that Jonas was discouraging Scylla from going to Ray in the first place. He obviously already knows she has Galdra just based on the vampire deer attack and when she shoved him. But he already has his suspicions, but yet, Jonas is just like, only trust me. And I think he's really just trying to keep her in his orbit. Obviously, Ray's POV shows us that he thinks she deserves someone who empowers her and doesn't stifle her. So I think it's just further evidence that he's going to be the male main character. Like, he has to be. And obviously, if he is, you would never put Scylla with him in the first book. Like, you want a slow burn for like a good kind of arc of their relationship. I think one of the more emotional moments for me was when Scylla offered Ray to like break their oath and just say, you know what? I know your name is Ray Galtung. I don't care. I don't care. I want you to just leave me. I want you to save yourselves. I don't want to bring danger upon your crew. And he offers to protect her anyway. And I think this is very indicative of where their relationship is headed eventually. Obviously, this raises Jonas's hackles. He's like, this is not the Ray that we know. This is not what he predicted Ray would do with the truth. And I think not only does that freak him out, but I think it makes him leery of like Ray's feelings for Scylla. So as like things kind of move forward, obviously we know Jonas becomes like eerily possessive of Scylla, and they get attacked by warriors. And partially because Jonas was really protective of Scylla, his brother dies. And this is heartbreaking, and this causes immense like rupture within the crew. Everyone's devastated. Jonas is severely devastated. And Scylla stays by his side. And Jonas's POVs were really concerning. Obviously, grief can make people experience like a wide range of emotions, and his is very much like in anger and vengeance. And he drugs her with the skull leaves and sells her to the Clayton. And he turns her in. And I know he wants Eliza's death to mean something. Like, I understand that. But I'm sitting there and I'm just... These chapters are really hard to read. And I think the scene that brought me a lot of agony, especially with this specifically, was after begging Jonas to come see her in the cell. It was just the way that he talked to her. I think she is someone who just longs so desperately for connection. And finally, Scylla, hold on, I have the exact quote right here. She says, "You confuse dishonest with dishonor. They are not one and the same, Jonas. I was dishonest for my own safety because look what has been done with the truth." And I think for me, this was so heart-wrenching because it was like the truth was finally out there in the open, and she's barely come to terms with not only what she is, but who she is. I don't think she's even really claimed the name Isa yet. And she was just betrayed. He used it for his own gain, and it just kind of ruptured the first relationship she's really had outside of with her dad. I do think that this meta girl that she met in the dungeon is going to be important later on. I could be wrong, But I don't think that scene was just thrown in there just to add a little bit more to the chapter. So I'm wondering how this girl that she met in the dungeon is going to come into play later on. One of the things that I think made me kick my feet the most was when Ray came back for Scylla. Obviously, he comes back and he's like, "You're a member of our crew. Of course I would come back." And it's like, is that really why you came back for her? I would argue with something else, but no, whatever. Obviously, when he comes back to save Scylla, we quickly learn he's Galdra and he's pretty BA. And there it is. He's the Slatari. He's the one melting people. And why didn't I see this coming? I knew it had to be a Blood X crew member, and like it obviously makes sense now that it would be Ray, and he'd be like this morally gray MMC who does bad things but for the right reasons. And I just feel a little bit silly that I really didn't see this coming until the very end. But also, that's also great writing, right? Where it becomes a little bit more apparent once you start trying to piece all the pieces together, but it wasn't so obvious that you could pick up on it as you were reading the story. I just like a trigger warning, I think the essay piece when she kills Volf, Commander Volf, I think is how you say it. That part was really hard to read. Oddly enough, Skreda helps when she's being attacked by Commander Volf, but then she tries to kill her and bring her, or she tries to bring her to the Queen anyway. And Skreda's character is one that is truly, I feel like, born out of just self-preservation. And Skreda erases any chance of Scylla finding a safe house, a shield house in Copa. And but I think the saddest part was like this realization that Scylla really has nowhere to go. She has nowhere to go, but Ray does come for her. He comes for her. And we get one of my favorite tropes where Ray's kind of like assessing her and looking at her. And I know he's kind of had this feeling about before when she's been hurt, and he's like, who did this to you? But this one where he kind of just murmurs, "I'll kill them." And I was like, yes, you were. And more points to you, Rainier Galton. More points to you, because he is just fulfilling all of my favorite tropes. And he might become one of my favorite book boyfriends by the end of this. But then Scylla does find out that he's the Slatari. So obviously it's not this like perfectly happy reunion. There's tension there. He knows she's been lying. Obviously he's been lying, but he still considers her part of his crew. Something like that they keep talking about, and I'm sure it's like an important plot device, but I cannot figure out what the point of this is. They keep talking about the humming, and Scylla seems completely unaware of this humming, and I want to figure out like what, there has to be more to this. Why do they keep talking about this humming? And something that I thought was really symbolic is Scylla takes over the horse reins at the end of their chapters together, and in a way, I felt like it was symbolic of Ray kind of like letting her take charge of her life and kind of moving forward. She was in the driver's seat of what was to happen. So I thought that was a really beautiful way to kind of end their chapters together and end this book together. And then in the epilogue, we get Saga's POV. And so now we kind of know who is going to be mainly incorporated in the next book. I'm excited to have Saga's perspective. I think it's going to help open up the world. We're going to get to have more insight into the Queen, which we really haven't gotten a lot of yet. We're kind of limited to the Blood X crew and their experience. And so I'm really excited to see how this world is going to open up. One side note that I made that I don't really felt like was included with any of these chapters was, what is with these red-eye animals and the rot smell? Like, I know this is going to be important, but I can't quite piece together how it's going to tie in yet. I feel like it's going to have something to do with the fact that Scylla is not sitting in like the seat of royalty, or the fact that like it's something to do with like the Volsics not being in power, because I think that it's kind of, anytime there's like this princess who's been dethroned and they're not where they should be, it has like an impact on the land. And that's my prediction, and I might be wrong, but I think that's where this is headed. And I think that concludes our book chat for The Road of Bones by Demi Winters. But we are not done. We are going to be continuing on with the Ashton series in May. And I just have to know, after finishing this book chat, are we officially Team Ray and Scylla yet? I hope so. But let me know in the comments your thoughts. And just a reminder, the best way to support this podcast is by liking and subscribing and hitting that bell to get notified when there's a new episode. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.